Good morning and welcome to the Roadmap MBA. My name is Ashleigh King and I am a guest presenter on the show, and I'm really excited to see you today for anyone watching or listening. So I really wanted to start first by just chatting about my week and seeing how other people's week's been. So it's been a super hot weather in the northeast of England and around the UK. Uncommonly warm weather. We've also had threats of thunderstorms. So it's been quite interesting, I think personally, as someone who's interested in business and how, external trends affect us, thinking about how the weather can affect our transport systems, our healthcare, some of the challenges that we have that are different to in the winter months. I also know that for me as a content producer or, doing a lot of filming, it can be so hot. So I've got this very huge jacket on to show you a particular point about what I'm talking about today, and then I'm going to have to take it off because if you've ever been in a studio, you'll know that the lighting gets so hot. So if you're watching, say hi. It'll be lovely to see you and say hello. I also wanted to just give a shout out. If you have any interesting topics that you would love to know more about relating to Masters in Business Administration, MBA content, but also general, business content. If you'd like to know a particular topic or a case study that you'd like me to look at, please give me a shout, because I love to present my own content and I love to research and find things that I think will be interesting. But I'd also like to know, who else might be listening and watching and what you might want to know more about. So if you've got any tips, just let me know. Really great to see you, Barbara. Hi. Anyone else coming in? It's good to see you this morning. So yeah, if you've got any tips of what you want me to cover next time, I would love to do some research and get something really meaty and helpful for you. So some of the topics I've looked at so far have been neurodiversity, so that's sharing my own story, although I would like to cover that in a little bit more detail, mainly around how we can make our workplaces more accessible. I have covered things like podcasting, because I'm a podcaster and I train people on how to podcast. I've covered some stuff around marketing, women in entrepreneurship, and all kinds of things like that. So to those of you who are saying that my jacket looks warm, it really, really does. It's so, it feels so warm. It's really hot. But I'm doing a topic about personal branding today. So it has a point, it's a prop, but I won't be wearing it for too long. So it's great to see, people commenting and saying hello. That's really nice. While I'm waiting and before I launch my topic, I just wanted to say a little bit about me for those of you who haven't watched this stream before. So the Roadmap MBA is a really fabulous resource, especially at the moment when we're all worried about rising costs. A lot of people aren't able to afford, traditional business education. So particularly around an MBA, it can be very expensive. It's an investment. And what I love about the Roadmap MBA is it's in over 30 countries around the world now, but it also is something that you can access online. So you get, a physical document that you can work through at your own pace, but you also have access to resources and videos, classroom teachings. So it's a great way that you can actually upskill yourself at an affordable cost. And every time someone buys a course is gifted away. So that to me is really special. I think it's a very unique way to do business education, and I'm excited about the future. I think standard business education has needed a shake-up for a while. So for me personally, I'm really excited about that. So that's about the Roadmap MBA. In March 2022, so this year, I was invited to present as a guest trainer to see if I liked it, and if I wanted to do it. And I wanted to say I'm so grateful for that opportunity, because every 2 weeks I get to present and practice live presenting, which is really cool because I'm always wanting to push myself out of my comfort zone, but it takes quite a lot of courage, I would say, to present live when you don't know who's watching, you don't know who's listening, you don't know what people are going to think or say, or what if they don't agree with you, what if you're not smart enough, all these things that go through our head. So actually all of this is so relevant to what I'm talking about today, which is personal branding and why your personal brand matters and how you can build it. So that's a bit of an intro about Roadmap MBA about me, but I'm really enjoying seeing some of the comments coming in. So Paul King is saying, my hat is a perfect example of personal branding. That's a very good point. This hat is so valuable, and I'm going to tell you more about the hat during this session. But obviously with my lovely jumper today, that's another personal branding thing. I've got some headphones on, but I am feeling very hot. So I think what I'm going to do is dive in so I can take the jacket off. Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about the power of personal brand, or the power of personal branding. So I believe that personal brand is really important because it can bring so many incredible opportunities. And I've read so much around this topic, but I was just actually looking at a post earlier. I think it was a recent post, but Joe Glover from Marketing Meetup had shared the power of personal brand. And actually he was in a lift, just a random selfie of him on LinkedIn. But what he had said is that we all know someone somewhere where we kind of thinking, oh, I really need that thing. And then you mention it to somebody and they know exactly who you need to speak to. So that's the power of personal brand, to be really clear about who you are, what you stand for. It can bring so many opportunities. So really great to hear from Barbara saying personal brand is so important. As a photographer for Barbara, I mean, she will work with amazing, people all over, and just bringing your brand to life through photography is really great as well. I think that takes a unique skill as a photographer, so it's great to see you here, Barbara. Okay, so let's dive in. So some of the things I'm going to be talking about are going to be the power of personal branding, when you should be authentic and maybe when you shouldn't, and also why values matter in your personal brand. I'm also going to talk about the things that I do to help me make better decisions if I get stuck in my business. So how I can use those values to help me create a better product for my clients, to create more opportunities for myself. But also if I'm stuck and I feel conflicted, whether it's morally or whether it's a time conflict and I don't know how I'm going to manage so many projects, I often look at my values and how that will help me reach my own goals. So I'm going to talk a little bit about values and personal brand, because I think that's an important part of the puzzle that's often missed out. So your personal brand is vital for career progression. Now, there's a great quote here from Kyle York. He's the founder of York IE. For me, I really like this quote. It says, "Your brand is your fingerprint. You leave it behind on everything you touch, and you don't exist without it." I thought that was such an emotive and interesting way to talk about brand, because he's right. It is like a fingerprint. You know, whether you are presenting something, whether you are doing something on social media, whether you're writing an email, whether you are in a lift and you've got 5 minutes to talk to someone and you happen to talk to the cleaner or the CEO, every person you come across is an opportunity to build your brand. And I think that's a really important thing. So I love that he talks about it like fingerprints. And I also think that with personal branding, it brings so many opportunities you might never have dreamed of. So that's really vital for your career progression, or if you're an entrepreneur, it can help to bring new opportunities. I wanted to reflect on that quickly, just thinking about, for me personally, how my personal brand has helped. So I remember many years ago, I worked in a university and I really wanted to move up a grade, and at the time I didn't have any degrees or any qualifications. And you may, if you've watched the Roadmap MBA channel, you might have heard this story before. But what I found is I didn't have a degree, I didn't have management qualifications. So what I started to do was courses to give me those skills. Now what blew my mind is when I would go into those rooms, often there would be senior managers who had been, they had been funded to do the program, and they would also have time to do it, so they wouldn't lose holiday, they would get paid for their time to attend. But because of my grade and my level, and it wasn't perceived that I would need any qualifications like that, I wasn't given those same opportunities. So I was actually self-funding. And it's quite something when you're in a room of maybe 20 to 30 senior leaders, and you're, 23, self-funding a course in management, I found that so strange. But what I found was I was able to network with leaders, I was able to meet senior team managers, and opportunities started to open up for me because they could see that I was dedicated, I was focused, and I was investing in myself. Similarly, at that time, I'd applied for 26 jobs to try and get to the next grade. Now, that's actually quite a low amount of applications. I'm reading online on LinkedIn sometimes, yes, there is a huge opportunity for people looking for work now. You know, there's a lot of gaps to fill. Recruiters are trying to fill so many vacancies. But at the same time, standing out is so tricky. And also, sometimes, how can you stand out when everyone looks the same and it's just a piece of paper? So what I started to do was I started to go networking. I started to join strategic boards. So I would be a trustee for a charity, or I would be an event organizer, or I would volunteer. And by being in those networks, what I found was I was increasing my network outside of my organization. But I was also getting visibility because those networks, I chose very specific strategic networks that built my reputation in an area I wanted to work towards. So community engagement, PR and communications, the social and voluntary sector. So what I found is as I was gaining more experience, I was also gaining exposure. And then what happened is I would start to go for interviews and people would recognize me. So when I got to the panel, they already knew who I was. They already had some idea of my work, whether I was trustworthy, whether I was credible, and that started to open lots of doors. At the same time, that doesn't mean it was easy. I also got knocked back from a lot of interviews. In some cases, I wasn't the right candidate. But what it did mean is that I was given, I would say, more feedback than maybe your standard candidate. So because they knew me or felt like they knew me, I then had the opportunity to get some real honest opportunities to work on and work through. So that's just a little bit of thinking about how it's helped me in my career to have a personal brand. And I'd love to hear for anyone watching, if you have worked on your personal brand, or if it's helped you to create your own career of your dreams, you know, please share, because I love to see the comments and see what people have been working on. Okay, so I'd like to cover a little bit about why you should build a personal brand. So we shared a few examples there of ways personal branding has helped me, but a lot of things I hear from people is I don't have time, I don't see value, and it doesn't matter. So for instance, why would I want to spend my time creating a personal brand just looking for attention when actually I've got this very busy tasks list to get through? You know, it doesn't help me meet my performance review outcomes, or it doesn't help move the needle forward on key objectives. Yes, that might be true, and there is definitely an argument for that. I would say that you can't just go networking or just be on various committees and volunteer all your time. I've certainly made that mistake in the past where I've been in, you know, roles where I was also the first aider, the mental health first aider, the fire warden, you know, on 5 or 6 committees voluntarily, as well as doing a job. And I've got to be honest, those things all impacted on my core work because I didn't have the energy that I needed to succeed. So I do think there is a time where you need to look at what you're doing around your personal brand. I also believe that it's important to remember that sometimes we talk about introversion and extroversion. And, you know, we have the wonderful Jenny Smith, who some of you may know, who's a networking specialist. She talks about ambiversion. So you can actually have traits that are introverted or extroverted. I think you can definitely build your visibility as an introvert as well. So a lot of people think when you talk about personal branding, it has to be an extroverted focus, but it doesn't. So a good example of that is one of my favorite authors, Susan Cain. I think that's her name. Gosh, I hope it is. She wrote a book called Quiet. That has been really helpful for me to consider things from a very different perspective to my own journey. And I think it's really important, again, as leaders, that we then give people the space to create their brand in whatever way works for them. So I'm just having a look at some of the comments. So Barbara said, the more visible you are, the more people grow, like and trust you. Personal branding shows you brand values and visions. Yes, absolutely. I love that you love your job, Barbara. I love mine as well. I get paid to chat. What better life could you wish for? But also, yes, when you are growing your brand and people get to see you and see how authentic you are, you know, it can really bring amazing things. You do never know who's watching, Paul, so you're right. I mean, I was saying to Steve before we started today, one of the things that completely threw me is I sent out I'm going to a networking event and I wanted to say hi and send a couple of people some messages, because I don't always get time to work my way around the room. You know, it's often loads of people wanting to chat. So what I did was I dropped a few messages to people to say, hey, we're going to the same event. In case I don't get to chat to you, it's really nice to meet you. So we connected on LinkedIn. And one person responded and said, oh my gosh, I've double booked. I can't make it. But actually, I love your work. I love what you do. Keep flying, you know, let's connect another time. And I was like, how do they know about me? How have they, you know, interacted with me before? But they've seen some of the posts like this one or live training that I've been doing. And that really made me smile, because you just don't know who's watching. Similarly, after a Roadmap MBA session that I did 2 weeks ago, where I was presenting, and then I was in a quick rush to get to the Chamber of Commerce event, I got to this event with half an hour left of the event. It was just casual networking, so it wasn't an issue to be late, but I was really excited to chat to people. And a few people said to me, how are you here? You were just on my phone or on my LinkedIn, you know, and it was so interesting because I didn't know they were watching. So again, you have no idea who's watching, what you're doing, and that's why we can have such tremendous impact. So I'm going to actually take this jacket off because it's super hot, and we're under heavy lighting and it's a hot day in the UK. So before I do, I just wanted to talk about personal brand for me quickly. So this hat I've got in July 2021. So I've only had it a year, but I wear it mostly when I'm networking or training or presenting or on my podcasts. But it's helped to be a visual clue to people that it's Ash who likes podcasting. So it's something that has helped to just give that visual clue to people. Similarly, headphones is a great way that I can show something that I'm interested in, like podcasting, just by wearing them around my neck. But this A was actually a birthday present, and it's huge. I do love it, but it feels ginormous. But I love pink, and if you look at my branding, if you look at a lot of my projects, a lot of the logos and brands are very pink. So this was such a thoughtful gift, and I love that. You know, I can wear something so extra because I think it's quite extra and flamboyant, but that's in line with my personality. We're going to go into in a few minutes how you can adjust your own personality or your own brand to meet you know, the needs of whatever you want to do in your business or personal life. So as I said, I'm going to take this off now because it's super hot. Oh gosh, that's so much better. Whew. Excellent. Okay, so back to business and back to what we were talking about. So when we say, I don't have time for a brand, I don't see the value and it doesn't matter, I just wanted to point out a very simple tool that if you've ever done marketing, you've probably heard of before, but it's the marketing conversion funnel. Okay, so if you look at your first thing that you'll have is awareness. So people will see you, whether it's online doing something like this, whether it's on YouTube, you know, with short content that they can process, whether you've written a blog or an article, whether you've commented on somebody's LinkedIn post, you know, a Facebook post you might have. So awareness is where people see something about you and then they think, I want to know more about that person. And so what happens is at that point, they start to consider you. So they may look at, I like their whole, you know, vibe. I like their energy. I like their viewpoint. I'd like to know a little bit more about this person. So for instance, for you now, it might be that you watch for a little bit longer. It might be that you go and look at someone's website. It might be that you look at someone's LinkedIn profile. So you consider them in the context of your world and the way you see things and your own agenda. And you might be thinking, I wonder if there's a way we could work together. I wonder if I know someone that they should know. And then you know, a great example of this with me is I've always wanted to work with the BBC. And something that's crazy that's happened for me in the last year is every time I do one of these training sessions, when I look at who's watching, it's always people from the BBC that are producers. And I know that, you know, I don't know if I'll ever work with the BBC, but it means a lot to me that the people that I would love to work for or to reach are seeing the content I'm producing. And also because it's your own opinion as a content creator, that's so valuable. So be nice to your content creators out there because they work super hard. At this point, when you're considering something, when you're looking at, you know, I wonder if I could work with them, I wonder who I should introduce them to, you then have a point of conversion. So that might be where you actually fill in a contact form on somebody's website, where you book a one-to-one, where you find a way to work together, where you email somebody and connect them as a recommendation. And then once you've got that conversion, you get to loyalty. And so that might be people who like your posts, who engage with your content, who really want to support you. But the biggest thing that I love about this funnel is advocacy. So that will be the people who talk about you when you're not in the room, but not for a bad reason, because they want to cheerlead you, because they are the people who are telling people about you, they are cheering you on, they are saying like, hey, you've got to meet this person because they will help you to do this or that. So I think that's really powerful, and advocacy is so important because for many of us, we struggle with our self-esteem, we're not sure if we're the right fit, and I think, you know, hearing from someone else how valuable your services have been can really make such a difference. So in terms of business here, you might look at a recommendation, a video testimonial, a quote. So for instance, I follow Leah Turner on LinkedIn, and recently she asked her community for people to give some feedback on what it's been like working with her. And then she turned that into a PDF social media post, and it was fantastic. She had brilliant testimonials. But using that technique helped her to stand out from the competition because she was able to show how she is delivering value to her clients. And, you know, there's a lot of LinkedIn trainers out there. So it's really amazing to see the response she got and the response and results she's getting for her clients. So if you haven't looked at the marketing funnel, I would highly recommend looking at that. It's a super useful resource. I've gone into it in a bit more detail than some of my previous trainings, but if you do an MBA or any business course or any marketing course, this is a basic. There are much more established versions of this, but I like this one because it's super simple and it's nice and colourful. So I wanted to talk about some tips about how to proactively manage your brand, because I sometimes see some mistakes around this that I think we could all do better. So one of the things I see a lot, I use LinkedIn a lot, right? So it's my main go-to place. I get most of my leads from there. I don't do any outbound sales. All of my leads or inquiries come into my business, usually because I'm recommended by someone, or I meet someone at a networking event, or I get an inbound contact form. I've got a waiting list. It's really exciting to have that problem as a business. And you know, I think that's really important. I just wanted to pick up on Paul's comment about business advocates have been vital for helping Flow Software Solutions grow. That's so true. You know, if you've got people who believe in you, who believe in what you're delivering, who help you, you know, who can spread the word, who can help to position you as a thought leader, that can be so valuable. So back to this whole thing about online photographs and LinkedIn. If you look at someone's LinkedIn profile, this happened to me the other day. I met someone, had a great time chatting to them at a networking event, and then went to add them on LinkedIn, and they just look totally different. So the picture must have been about 10 years ago. So we all age, we change, we adapt, we go through stress, we go through things in our lives. But wouldn't it be better to just be you and just to update that, you know, so that it's more reflective of who you are? It doesn't need to be a super professional photo, although if you have the funds, I would recommend you do invest in that, because your personal brand says a lot about you before you even enter a room. At the same time, you know, you can do a very simple selfie on your phone against a blank background. So you've got, you know, a really clear and nice simple shot. And if Barbara's still watching, she might have some tips she can put in the comments about, you know, simple ways to take a photograph of yourself and increase your brand. But one of the other things that I see that I would consider a mistake or something that could be better is when on a business platform like LinkedIn, for a profile picture, we use a picture with alcohol or a picture in your wedding dress or with your kids. Now, I'm not dissing any of those things. I'm not saying that you shouldn't talk about your family, or you shouldn't talk about your relationship, or you shouldn't talk about your activities like alcohol or something like that. But I think remembering that we're all from different faith groups, different walks of life, different views of seeing the world, it seems to me that as a starting point, it would be really sensible to just keep it simple, head and shoulders, without any alcohol or anything like that in. Sure, you can use props. You know, my hat's a prop and it's in all my photos, so that's true. But I think that's really helpful. I'm laughing at the idea of catfishing people at a networking event, you know, presenting someone to them that you're not. That's a really valid point, you know, that does happen a lot. And then you think, similarly, I think around catfishing and being the way you really look, I think it's important not to over-filter your posts or your photographs. This is something that is quite important to me because I'm seeing a lot of young women. I mentor a lot of young girls who tell me, you know, they're 14 years old and they're saying, I would never post a picture on Instagram without a filter on it. And I think as much as I love to be a girly girl and I love eyelashes and nails and stuff like that from time to time, I think it's important not to over-filter yourself because we all are beautiful in our own unique ways, and that's, you know, that's really lovely to see the different ways we can be in the world. So yeah, so we've got some comments about the way we write on LinkedIn, or not just LinkedIn, any of your social media, so Instagram, Twitter, something like this. How you write, especially in your blogs, is important to try and relate it to how you speak in real life. So that means that the people who are listening feel that you're speaking directly to them. Another important thing around that is to think about, you know, in marketing, we talk about personas. Who is your ideal client? So some people will love the way you talk, love the way you write, and some people will absolutely hate it. So for instance, I'm presenting on this channel today, but a very different presenter is Steve Pugh, who, you know, runs Roadmap MBA. We've got very different styles of interacting with the audience, different ways of presenting. There will be people who absolutely love his style, and there'll be people who absolutely love my style. So I like to always call this with my clients, who is your soulmate client and who is your nightmare client, and trying to be aware of that and then writing for your soulmate client. So if you use the words that you know will reach those people who really want your services, who are looking for you and wanting to find you, you will really touch them. And I've noticed that since I've started to write in that way, it's helped me to connect with much more people in a real way. So, hi Valeria, it's so nice to see you commenting. Yes, I agree that it's important not to over-filter yourself. Even if you have pimples, I love that. So Sarah Davies, who many people might know, who's a very strong advocate of the northeast of England, and she's been on Dragon's Den, or is a dragon on Dragon's Den, Strictly Come Dancing, all these kind of things. One of the things I like about Sarah Davies is, although she's, you know, her media presence is huge, she still posts pictures of herself with no makeup on going for a run, or doing stuff, you know, in a garden, or just day-to-day life. And I think those small little parts of life that we get to experience with people are so important. So yeah, and I love that Barbara's given us some tips. So if you're looking for some photography tips, you can have some there. Thank you so much for sharing them. And the most important thing is to just have fun, which is really, really great. So I love that. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about online photographs, social media profiles matching your tone of voice, consistent messaging across social media platforms. This is something, I've got to be honest, I'm actually working on this myself. I find that I'm so busy with client work that I'm not always consistent with how often I post or how much I want to say. Sometimes I'll use the same post on multiple channels when actually something would be better for Instagram only or Instagram stories. So it's something that I'm working on. But I do think it's important to have a message that you talk about consistently. And so for that reason, your posts, especially if you're using it for business or for work or growing your business or finding new clients, or if you're doing something around a social cause, that it's around a particular niche or a particular focus. So it might be that you talk about 3 things. For me, for instance, I talk mainly around podcasting, mainly around business thoughts or topics. And also I talk a lot about neurodiversity because I have ADHD. So those are some of the areas I talk about. I might talk about things related to that, like women in entrepreneurship, why women don't seek funding, all kinds of things, or just generally around creative industries and tech sector. But what I've found is as I've started to post more with a particular focus, so for instance, podcasting, I've started to get much richer leads and a much better experience of the types of clients I want to work with. So what I'm finding now is what I said earlier about soulmate clients. I'm actually reaching my soulmate clients. I'm looking around me at the work I'm doing and I'm thinking, how did I get to work on this project? This is amazing. So it's really important to try and, speak to the people you want to speak to. I think that's really important. Okay, so bringing your own personal brand to life, some tips here as well. So this might sound a bit odd, but think of yourself as a product. So we are all, in a sense, a product. What I mean by that is we have value, we have ways of working with people, we have ways that we want to, develop relationships with people. And so when people are shopping online, if we go back to our marketing funnel we talked about earlier, they are seeing you, you're raising awareness, and then you've got, a phase of considering someone and whether you want to work with them. So there's all of these kind of things that you're thinking about. So although it might seem a bit mean to think of yourself as a product, we are in fact products. We're buying each other's services, we're working together, we're collaborating. And if people don't like what they see, they don't want to work with you. So the other thing about products is that we all have our own tastes. So again, back to, changing consumer interests, it's a really important thing. But if you think of yourself as a product, it helps you to separate yourself from any feelings or negative emotions. So what I wanted to say around that is, how do you want to look? How do you want to sound? How do you want to communicate? What is your body language? So some things you might see there is, for me, it's important for me to try and chat to people. So I see comments coming in and I want to say hi to Ashish, hi to Valeria again. And it's so nice to hear your lovely posts and comments, Valeria. Thank you so much. I want to be able to say hi to people because to me, collaboration is so important and people are so important. I also think, I'm a very chatty person. I love to use my hands. I'm very tactile. I like to have a lot of energy in my delivery. So when you are in any situation, how do you want to be? How do you want to answer the phone? How do you want to reply to your emails? How do you want to use an email signature? What do you want on that signature? So a simple way that you can increase your podcast views, for instance, or your social media visibility, I've added to my signature, watch my latest episodes on YouTube. It's such a simple way to get people looking at your content. So what do you want to do? What do you want to build around yourself? Is it that you want to have a bright future hat? Is it that you know that when you go to a particular event, you're going to act in a particular way? It's really important to think about the things that you might be saying without even saying a word. So I always like to smile when I go to a networking event so that people will come over and say hello, or they feel that they can chat to me. There's so much you can do to really touch people and have that connection. I also wanted to talk about things that maybe we didn't think about that give the wrong impression, but without us meaning to. So a good example of that is if you are a wedding planner, but your focus is around sustainability. So you want to do sustainable weddings, for instance, but your branding is very luxurious and expensive, and your business cards cost a fortune to create and they embossed and they difficult to recycle, that doesn't match with what you're putting yourself out as. So it's little things like that that we might not be aware of. I've noticed this for myself in the past. Before I discovered neurolinguistic programming and became a master NLP trainer, I noticed that a lot of my language wasn't matching the person I wanted to be, the presenter I wanted to be, the business owner I wanted to be. And so it wasn't really reflective of where I want to go, and it felt stuck in the past. So thinking about your language, thinking about what you're doing, thinking about what you're saying, thinking about what you're wearing, all of that is really important. So yeah, those are just some things to think about. And does your behavior match your values? So this is something I really want to talk about. I'm going to have a sip of coffee, and I'd love to invite you to share any thoughts you might have around personal branding, a time it's worked for you, a time it hasn't. And if you struggle to work and live in line with your brand values, I'd love to know more about that. I'm just catching up on some of the comments. I love the idea about not having any shadows behind you when you're doing photographs. I agree, that is so important. And thinking about lighting and where you are outside. And Steve said, with behavior, you need to act in the way and for the position you want to be perceived. That's a very good point. So in relation to Steve's point about the way you want to be perceived and acting in the way of where you're going, I always remember a story I was told of, one of my friends went to and worked in a call center, and every day this gentleman turned up in a suit. So he was in the most beautiful suit, his shoes had been shined, and he just was so excited to be there, and he did the best job, and he worked in this call center. And around him were lots of young kids, young people who maybe were more interested about what they were doing on the weekend. And that's totally cool, because I've been there too. But my point is, you could wear casual clothing, you could, do whatever you wanted. This particular call center wasn't very strict, but this gent used to turn up every day in a suit with a smile, super positive attitude. And you'd say to him, well, why are you so dressed up? Are you going to an interview? Are you, going to a friend's graduation? What's going on? And he would say, I'm dressing for my next job. I'm dressing for my next position. And just that energy and that motivation and that attitude that he was driving himself forward, he didn't know what was going to come up, but he was just, dressing for the next thing. I've always remembered that. I think it's so powerful. It's really interesting to see some of the comments coming in the chat about people not feeling like they're themselves online and offline, and there's that disconnect. I have to be honest, I really, really empathize with you, Valeria, who said that, because I've got this wonderful hat on and I love it. And I call it glowworm days. So where I've got my hat on, I'm feeling really, in the zone and really on it, and I love what I'm wearing. But some days I just want to take the hat off and not let anyone see me and have no makeup on and just wander around in comfy clothes and bare feet and just be in nature. So I think it's really important that we do look after the persona we're creating, but we also have a downtime, because it can be very difficult, I think, to juggle that authenticity, but also, if you're trying to put something out there that isn't you, you're going to feel a rebuff. People are going to notice that as well. I've always found that if there's been a problem between me and someone, say for instance when I used to manage teams and I didn't understand what the problem was or the issue, it often would come down to communication and a clash in values. And so knowing all of that can be really powerful. I really like Cece's comments about authenticity and judgment and feeling hate, particularly online. She's absolutely right that for every hateful comment or everything that you hear that's negative, there are always people who will love your vibe. There is this saying, your vibe attracts your tribe, so it's about surrounding yourself with people who will cheerlead you, but it's also about holding yourself accountable to be the best version of yourself. So you want people who are going to tell you like it is. So I've got some friends in my life, some business mentors, for instance, Steve included, who, if I'm not living my best truth or doing my best, will actually say to me, hang on, Ash, that's not quite right. You could work on this a bit better. And it's not a negative thing. It's a helpful thing. It's constructive feedback. So I think it's important to surround yourself with cheerleaders, but not just your own silo or what do we call it? An echo chamber where you're just hearing the same messages over and over again. So it's really interesting to hear some of the things that people are feeling around inconsistency with personal brand. Like when you have influencers who talk about the environment and how much they want to save the planet, and then they're taking jets all over the world, private planes, you know, they're going on holiday every 4 weeks. So it's really, really interesting to hear some of these frustrations that are coming through. Valeria, you mentioned you're not sure exactly where you're coming short in terms of your own tension between the offline and online you. Please, let's have a chat. I would love to talk to you more about that. So it's really interesting to hear some of these thoughts coming through. Please keep commenting. I'm going to get back to my material, but I just wanted to acknowledge all of the people who are taking time to comment. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, so we were talking about living your brand values and does your behavior match your values? So I just want to encourage you to think about for a moment which organizations you want to work with and which ones you might not want to work with. Now, I've put some examples here, for instance, environmentally focused as ones I want to work with and ones that I don't want to work with, such as gambling. That's my personal perspective, but other people may have a different set of boundaries or values. So that's your decision there to make. And for some people, the price is what's right. So for some people, it doesn't matter as long as they get paid. They don't really mind. There's no right way or wrong way. I'm not here to say this is what you must do. I'm just giving you a different alternative view. But for me, organizations that I want to work with are those who are thinking about the environment, who are trying to be better. They don't have to be perfect, but they're working on it day by day. Work around social inclusion, social justice, you know, trying to make things fairer for people, which is why I love the Roadmap MBA, because I really believe in the mission of how it's changing education. You know, things like, oh gosh, I'm thinking, I work with a lot of coaches, for instance, so helping people to find their voice and their story and really energize that. Or I'm working with a lot of disabilities charity groups where we're working on creating their podcast and their podcast strategy to share more stories of people who live with really challenging circumstances and hearing their voices in their own words. So those are the kind of organizations that I want to work with. But at the same time, there are some that I don't wish to work with. So I've turned down sponsorship or work with gambling organizations or certain gaming organizations. I personally love to game. I'm a gamer. It's a guilty secret. I love to play all kinds of games on my iPad. But there are certain things I wouldn't want to support. Similarly, some of my own personal values are I don't want to support the porn industry, so sexual adult content. I don't want to support anything that's tied to human trafficking or anything like that, weapons. So those are my values. But what I did want to point out is actually when it comes to personal brand, who you support, who you choose to work with, that will actually impact how people choose to work with you. So I've actually seen that before where people have pulled sponsorship to work with someone because they've been really disappointed that they affiliated with a particular industry. So that's something to think about. Where is your boundary? What are your lines of who you want to work with? And a similar thing about living your brand values, something that I'm really curious about is the sober movement. So a lot of people don't drink alcohol. What we've been doing at Flamingo Heights for quite a long time is we actually haven't been having alcohol at our events. So we have quite a lot of evening events, very small networking groups, but we're just doing teas and coffees and juices. And yes, if the client or the person who is hiring the space would like to have an event with alcohol, we will do that. But actually for our own events, we want to welcome people from other faith groups, from different backgrounds, you know, people who maybe have struggled with addiction or other challenges. You don't have to explain why you don't drink, but it's so nice to be able to network without needing to have alcohol. So that's just an example of one of the ways that I'm trying to live my own brand values of including others. So yeah, if you have any of your own criteria or brand values, then please do share in the comments. Hi Imran, it's so nice of you to say hello. I think it's really important what Steve's saying about being conscious of other people's beliefs. That's really valid. I love Gillian's thing about going to wearing a branded t-shirt with jeans and trainers. That's really, really nice. Yeah, there's some great comments coming in. Thanks so much for your support, guys. Really nice to hear from Cece about going to events where there's non-alcohol drinks available, and how important it is for us to be able to include everyone. I think there's lots of people in recovery who we might not even know are going through that, so it's really important to think about the people in our audience and their needs. So I wanted to talk very quickly about when to be authentic and when not to be. And if you have any comments or any examples of times where you're thinking, oh my gosh, why did I do that? I should never have done that. Or something you've seen online. So one of the things that many of us on LinkedIn particularly have noticed this week, it's been completely viral, is we had a CEO who let staff go and actually posted a picture of him crying. And everyone and everybody has been posting about it. So I've seen it on various different news or newsletters I've been involved in or read. I've seen it on my LinkedIn feed everywhere. And so people taking pictures of themselves parodying, crying, and I find it really problematic and confusing, because in so many ways we're saying men should be kind, we should talk about mental health, men should have the opportunity to share their thoughts and feelings and views, but then at the same time a man is sharing this image where he's upset and we're vilifying him and we're saying how could you do that, making fun of him. Now I do actually think the post was a problem. I don't think he should have posted that image. But what I'm trying to say here is that is because that post was more about him than it was about his employees. So what I found really interesting in contrast was, I think it's Hootsuite or HubSpot. Hootsuite, sorry. Hootsuite had to let some staff go. They had, for whatever reason, they had to reduce their staff. But as an organization, they said, look, we're really sorry. We have to let some staff go. What we're going to do is we're going to help them get the best possible placements that we can in other organizations. Here is an email that you can contact us. We've got so many people, we can't tag them all, but please contact us if you have any roles. We've got brilliant people that we want to hire, we want to put forward. So I think that was a really great way to let people know as an organization that they were, wanting to let staff go, but that there were ways that you could hire their staff. Another point though is in relation to that specific CEO, is that being an entrepreneur myself and seeing how tricky it can be, you don't always know how things are going to go. You make speculative decisions. Sometimes it feels like a roller coaster. Your cash might be great for a while and then it might change. Being an entrepreneur is an incredibly risky business. So what I would say is that I respect his authenticity and honesty in saying, oh my gosh, this was so hard, I had to have this decision. But I don't think it was appropriate to share that in the way that he did. So I don't want to spend too much more time on that because I think he's got enough airtime already. But I do want to just encourage us to remember that when you post things in your own opinion, that's great. But at the same time, people are watching you. So if you're going to post something making fun of someone, if you're going to be mocking people, if you're going to be posting a comment that might be inappropriate, if you're talking about something in a racist way, if you're talking about something that's showing hate towards another group, those things will come back to you. And I know, for instance, when I've run TEDx events in the past, I've actually had people call me out on having certain speakers because of things that they've said 2-3 years ago. And it's really interesting how what you say online follows you. So I think that's why it's really important to be mindful of what you're talking about. Okay, this is one of my favorite things. So I think with personal branding, it's not about me, it's about you. Now that sounds a bit of a strange concept. Let me explain what I mean there. When you are working with people, everyone has different needs, everyone has a different agenda. We all want to work with people in our own way. And yes, we need to sell ourselves, we need to sell our services, we need to meet people, we need to move the needle forward on tasks and objectives and performance results. But actually, the more you help people, the more you assist your network, the more you work with others and make it about them, about your gift to them, you get a lot of research around servant leadership and serving your audience and giving. That sense of working with your team or leading people forward and making it more about them than it is about you is actually really important. So for me, that's one of my values. One of my key values that I talk about all the time is collaboration over competition, and I use that hashtag all the time. But for me, it's about finding the right team that I can nurture and work with so that together we can get great results. And I think that's so powerful when you see people grow. So it's something to think about. It's not about me, it's about you. And for yourself, it's not about you, it's about the people you're working with, your clients and others. It's really interesting to see the comments coming through. We've got lots of views on our crying CEO. Okay, so one thing I wanted to share with you before I wrap up is some of the things that I notice working with clients around how people get stuck in terms of expressing themselves. And I've written a hint, it's usually when they're unsure of their values. So I often have people say to me, I'm so scared to post online. What if people see what I write? What if people don't like it? What if people don't like me? I can't start a podcast. Who would listen? Why would they listen? What if I sound stupid? What if they don't like my voice? What if I talk too quickly like I am right now? What if I'm not taking enough of a breath? What if I'm... All of these things, gosh, they are so exhausting and they take up so much space in your energy. And the thing is, a lot of the time when I'm working with these clients, what we find is that they're actually unsure of their values. For whatever reason, their values have shifted over time, as ours always do. You fluctuate. If you are raising a family and you have a small family, your time might be more family focused. If you are single or if you are, without children, you might focus more on your career or a passion or an interest. So we all have different times in our life where we have different values or changing values. And it's really important that we can change and evolve. So what I would say is if you're feeling stuck, and this is back to Valeria's comment earlier about not knowing if the online and the offline matches and feeling a disconnect, to me that sounds like a sense of values and around identity. So I would say to anyone who's stuck in that issue, think about what is it that you love about yourself? What are the things that just light you up, the things you love to do? What are the things that people say to you, please, can you help me with this? You are so good at that. I know that I can trust you to help me. And you find it super easy. What are the things that just bring you joy? So Barbara spoke earlier about, she just loves being barefoot and in the garden and on the grass. That's really important. Those things are going to light you up. So if you're spending all of your time indoors and working away and being a workaholic, which I can be guilty of, that is going to distract you from your values, and it's going to mean that you're not living your truest version of yourself because you're not putting your time and energy into things that give you joy. Sometimes we're in situations where we don't have the opportunity to live in our values. We've got to deal with external, complicated things going on around us, whether in our personal or professional lives. And that's where it's important to have a set of boundaries and values that you can control. So what I love about that, gosh, there's so many books I would want to recommend to you today. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People is still one of my favorites around brand. But also Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, who talks about, being able to control your sphere of influence and control. So if you are feeling stuck and so, impacted by things around you, what are the things that you can control? What are the things that you have a way to connect with or respond to or protect? Or what are those things that you can do? And how can you use your gifts to nurture others? As we said earlier, it's not about you, it's about them. So it's a really good point what Alicia said. Nice to see Alicia. But about in the charitable sector, people think, you're against each other. And that is so true. We're competing for resources, we're competing for different funding streams. But actually, if you've got someone that you can pick up the phone to and say, hey, I'm really stuck with this, do you know who I could talk to? That is so valuable. So your personal brand brings you a network, it brings you opportunities. It brings you being that person that we spoke about earlier, that Joe Glover was talking about in his marketing meetup post, around being the person where someone thinks, oh gosh, I've got this opportunity. Who do I speak to? And they think of you. So those are just some thoughts. But if you're feeling stuck, do look at what are the things that inspire you? What are the things you really struggle with? And is there any tension there that you could work out? I wanted to leave you with this. I think it's really cheeky, but I think it's true as well. So what do people say about you when you leave the room? So I think this is a really important point. What do people say about you when you leave the room? Also, what do you say about others? I think it's important when you're in any organization or any situation, it's important to be able to offload and share difficulties and things you've been through and stuff you're not understanding or that you could learn from. But I think gossip's really important to avoid. We all have ways that we can feel frustrated and annoyed by things, or when we're working with others. But when you gossip, it spreads like wildfire. Things get misconstrued, especially in an organization. So I've covered this before, looking at organizational change and culture and leadership during times of change. Gossip is one of the key things that happens where organizations go wrong. So I think what I would say is, it's really important as organizations that we have transparency and information. But even for ourselves, if you have something you want to talk to someone about, speak to them if you can, and reach out to those where you need to offload or talk through a situation in a trusted space, in a safe space. So for instance, which often happens, if I think, oh gosh, I'm not sure I feel right about that, I'll speak to my business coach or somebody that I feel safe with, that I can share my thoughts and reflections, and they'll give me a different perspective. And I think Steve said gossip is like poison for business. I cannot agree more. I did want to share a really brief situation. Recently, I came into some intellectual property discussions around some of my content being repurposed in a way that I didn't feel comfortable with, and I jumped to certain conclusions. There isn't a lot of guidance or legislation around content, especially in relation to podcasting, because it's still in many ways a new industry. So what I found was, by actually ringing the person directly and just saying, hey, I'm really not comfortable about this, we were able to come to a solution really quickly. Because if I hadn't done that, I would have come up to all kinds of misunderstandings or thoughts or just jumped to conclusions that weren't really true. So it's a really important thing. So what do people say about you when you leave the room? Is it uplifting? Is it wonderful things? And also the caveat of it's none of your business. So many times people will come to me and say, oh, I heard this interesting thing, or, so-and-so said this. And I'm like, thank you so much, but that's actually none of my business. It really isn't, so I think it's important, we talk about being thick-skinned. That isn't always easy, especially if you've got big hearts or you want to do purpose-led work or social focused work. But actually part of that is around having your own strength of character, your own value system, and your own personal brand that you believe in. That can help so much to cope with those challenges. And I use that all the time. If I need to make a decision about a podcast guest, whether they're the right fit for me, whether it's an organization I want to work with, whether it's a project I want to work with, if someone doesn't want to pay me my usual rate, having values can help me to say, actually, I'm going to hold to my decision. So a really simple example there is, recently I was asked to work for, a tenth of my usual day rate. And I thought about it and I was thinking, well, it's money and I'm worried about rising costs. I'm a small business myself. But you know what? If I do that work, I'm setting a precedent that I'm happy to be paid that amount. I'm also disrespecting my current clients who are paying my full price. And I'm also disrespecting myself, because one of my values is that with more financial support around me, by charging what I should, I actually can have more impact. I can help more people and I can share more stories with the world. So it's really important to hold yourself to certain values. And I would encourage you today to take a look what yours are in relation to your personal brand and what you can do with that. So that's all from me for today. I am so grateful to everyone who's commented and chatted. It's been a very chatty bunch this morning. If you do want to, if you want me to cover anything in particular, please do drop a message. Even if you're watching afterwards, you can still comment. I'll take a look at those and try and interact with some of you as well. But I'm always, looking for new ideas, things I can research, so if you've got an idea of something you'd like me to cover, a case study, something you're struggling with, please reach out. And it's awesome to see you as always. Thank you.